Do you find that you see so many differing news stories on the internet and social media, and it giving so many opinions that you find it hard to work out the truth from fiction? If so, that's what I'm going to be talking about on this video. And I'll be telling you how you can start to find what's true from what's not. Do you remember how we used to get the news before we had the internet? You'd hear it on the news and you'd read it in the papers, and you assumed it was unbiased because journalistic integrity seemed so important. Since the dawn of the internet and the 24-hour news, that's all changed. With the immediacy of the news these days, it seems like they don't have any time to do any fact-checking in the race to get it to the telly or online as quickly as they can. And now, with social media, views on the news are spread so quickly that it's then converted into sound bites. Now we've got lots of stories flying around social media, many with the potential to cause upset and raise the hackles. Here's my opinion on why. You see an outrageous piece and you get emotionally wound up by it, so you post about it on social media. Someone else sees it and either agrees with it or doesn't. If they agree, they often share it or post with the link to a piece on the timeline. And before you know it, it's popping up everywhere. And below it in the thread, people are vociferously arguing and disagreeing, tempers get raised, and on it goes. But what's also true is that in this time when the news is so easy to get out there, it's also easy to get rumours and misinformation out there as well. What you have to remember though, is that the media is looking to sensationalise everything. It's fighting to get your attention. We live in a world in which numerous publishers generate income online from the pay-per-click advertising. Why else do you think there are so many adverts on a page in amongst the editorials? The more readers an article gets, the more customers and the more revenue. And that's why we see more and more biased and sensationalistic reporting. It gets you reading. And it's all about money. The media is doing its best to manipulate you and your emotions. Just don't fall for it. And we're seeing more and more news sites on the net, more special interest groups, more activist websites. Call me a cynic if you want, but I look at them with all their adverts all over and can't help but think it's all about the money. And yet people see it on the net and take what they're reading at face value. Their emotions are heightened and they spread around social media, getting more involved in the narrative, and everyone's clicking on links to the story, and it's continuing to contribute to the source's income. Even when it's a fabricated source, people fall for it. We appear to have become more gullible. I stopped taking things at face value and getting all hot and bothered about it a while back. I rarely share anything because I don't want to keep it going. I think that we really need to start looking a bit deeper before we share everything that we see. Now, before I carry on, if you're watching for the first time here and you're finding this content of value, I often talk about subjects such as this and a variety of other things that I find interesting, including nostalgia, music, telly, life lessons, and even some of my love stories. If this sounds good to you, click the subscribe button and ring that bell so you don't miss anything. But what can we do? For starters, you can check the source. Is the piece anonymous? If you can't trace who wrote it, can you believe it? Don't believe everything they've quoted, especially if they've quoted from someone else. If they've not checked their source properly and it's wrong, they'll just say that it's the original source's fault. When you read a quote, it's usually been picked out because the writer wants you to think a certain way, positive or negative. But is that quote taken out of context of the subject that the speaker was talking about? Pretty much anything we say can be turned around and used against us if it's put in a different perspective. What was the person actually trying to say? The only way to know is to read the original piece and not just the quote. If it's sensational and sounds unbelievable, chances are that if you think it is, it is. Does the piece try to show both sides of the story, or is it biased? Are there dubious motives about the piece? Are all media covering the story in the same way? If they're not all saying the same thing, then it's not probably as straightforward as you think. And I suppose you really need to ask yourself, Do you need to share it? Have you fact checked that it's right, or are you taking it at face value? Do you need to share it now? Does it really need to be shared? People are trying hard to get us to believe their point of view in order to gain an advantage over us. It's how it is. Yes, I'm cynical. You may think I'm talking rubbish. You don't have to agree with me. It's just my opinion. But don't you owe it to yourself to check before you share? Feel free to make a comment down below. I would love to hear what you think. I've seen so many sensational headlines over the last 4 or 5 years. There have been so many stories where the truth's been bent just enough to make you get emotional enough to get wound up. And all the time the pay-per-click income keeps rolling in. The choice is yours. And if you click up there, in that video I ask, what really matters to you?